Hey everybody, this is the Live on the Drive Extendo version, the multi-province edition. As promised, I'm doing a Live on the Drive for my trip here across many miles. I'm going from Vancouver to Toronto this week because my little brother is getting married and I wanted to bring my car and my dog. So here I am, driving. I'm at the sort of end part of my trip for today in terms of getting to today's destination, and I've been thinking a lot about what I wanted to talk about for Live on the Drive, and I've got some ideas. But first I just wanted to update you. I told a couple folks that I was using this app called Papa Ride. It's new, I'd never used it before, and basically it's a carpooling app. So what that means is that I had like bids from passengers to come and ride with me for a while, and I'm pleased to say that my first Papa Ride experience was much better than expected. I picked up a young man by the name of Owen. He's 19 years old, and we had like cool conversations. We talked about lots of things. It was interesting to get the perspective of someone like, oh my god, like 19 years older, younger now? Yeah. And we shared tunes and had chats about like the meaning of life and all that kind of stuff, and like talked about the internet a lot, and we talked about business, and we talked about the guy that he worked for that was like self-employed and kind of like a jackass to him and stuff. So I have like good stories, and anyways, yeah, so good experience. And then I got like $50 towards my gas money. So hey, how about that? And I felt like I did a good thing, you know, because he was gonna hitchhike otherwise, and like that's not safe. I mean, in some places it's safe, but mostly it's not safe. So just a quick little personal update on that note. Dog's doing well, I'm doing well. And yeah, so horrible mistakes that self-employed people make. Man, there's so many, and I'm just gonna talk about the ones that like I've made, because I feel like that's the more appropriate way to go about things. I could talk about the ones that I've like seen other people make and stuff, but that's like maybe rude or like not good disclosure. But I know for myself, like self-employed, what's the first word in self-employed? It means self, right? And like, so I kind of thought that I had to do everything myself when I first started. And I will say that like as a blanket statement, self-employed people tend to be pretty self-reliant. And like, it seems like a good idea, because then you're like, well, I can depend on myself and I will show up for myself and all those things. But what happens is then like you end up, I'll just talk about myself, I ended up doing too much. Surprise, surprise. Because when you're self-employed, you're like all the things, right? You're like the bookkeeper, and you're the marketer, and you're like the customer service agent, you're the tech support agent, and you are the dishwasher and the cleaner, and you know, like a million different jobs. And like, let's face it, people, even if you are as talented as like, oh, I don't know, me, for example, and I'm pretty talented at like a number of things, there's other things I'm just like so bad at. My bookkeeper sends me like messages. I'm surprised she doesn't use more like disdainful emojis, because my math sometimes is just rough. She's like, you were $20 off, or you were $2,000 off. And I'm just like, wow, I'm glad you have my back, you know? Because like, it's not that I can't do math, it's just I'm on to the next thing, and I'm not really paying, you know, maybe as much attention as I should. And that is kind of like the whole reason that I have a bookkeeper, you know, because I know that I suck at that, because I did it before myself, and I had like problems, you know, like Revenue Canada problems, and like nobody wants that. So anyways, I learned that mistake like well, took me a couple of years, because I like to suffer before I change. And I see this in self-employed people as well. So like the point of me telling you this rather long and protracted story, because I have so much time, is that like get some help. Know what I'm saying? Like, even, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It could be like, you know, you call your sister every Friday and cry, or you go to a meetup group and you like hang out with other self-employed people, or you like hire a bookkeeper, or you go on Upwork and you get someone else to do your data entry for you. All I'm saying is that like the superhero complex, or the martyr complex, or the like do it all yourself complex is like only going to contribute to poor health. Yeah, there, I said it. Burnout's a thing, people. Hit me hard for sure, and that's one of the reasons I had to like learn that. I was like, oh, I need to like maybe get some assistance with this whole business thing. And like another mistake is like, one of the reasons, okay, I just want to shortcut for 1 second. If you hear like a strange slurping noise, it's because my dog, I think you can see him. No, you can't see, I don't know if you can see him. Be like, there he is, see? I have an entire car, and where does he ride? He rides right here. Yep, and he makes like weird slurping noises. I don't know why exactly, but anyway, if you hear weird slurping, it's not me. Anyway, as I was saying, self-employed, I know I started my business because I wanted to do things my way. I wanted like a certain amount of freedom that like working a job wasn't really allowing me to have. Like, you know, I didn't want to show up early and wear a suit, you know, stuff like that. Anyways, so the thing about the freedom aspect of things is that often without the type of help that we, you know, need to get, especially for things that we suck at, we don't have freedom in terms of like those hours. We don't get those hours back. And also, when it comes to freedom, so I heard an interesting quote the other day that I really, really like. It's like, freedom comes from discipline, and I 100% agree with that, even though it seems like a paradox or like something that isn't possible because it's like a contradictory statement, but it's not. It's not. So self-employed, right? Like, so I'm guilty of this. It's like, it's a nice day, I'm gonna go walk my dog. Or like, I don't really feel like doing this thing that I know would help me. Or like, I don't think I'm gonna shower today. You know, and like, I hate to admit it, but it's true, because it's like, man, I run my own gig, I can do what I want, and like, sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes the freedom to do whatever you want means that you don't do the things that you should do, right? So we don't have like structure, and we don't have accountability. And if you don't have structure or accountability, well, let me tell you what, you're not as productive and maybe not as profitable. And certainly what starts to happen is like all these tasks just like end up being like unfinished, or I don't know, like I also call it like squirrels or shiny object syndrome, where it's like, oh hey, I could do this thing, or oh hey, I could do that thing, or oh hey, I could do this thing. And like what happens is you have like 100 unfinished tasks, and like eventually what happens with that sort of business is you end up with like some serious like self-confidence stuff that crops up, because it's like, oh hey, I'm a loser and I can't finish anything. Like, I don't know about you guys, maybe you don't call yourselves losers, but I had a little thing in my head that would call me a loser that I had to like beat to death. I mean, not beat to death, but I need to like negotiate with, you know, the inner critic. We all have it, right? So whatever it calls you. Yeah, so it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to not have discipline. But the thing is like, it's hard to do this whole thing by yourself. So like, the thing that we don't have is accountability. So it's like talking to someone, maybe it's your sister, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your like next door neighbor, I don't know, whoever you talk to. You can't talk to them like all the time about what's going on in your business because of a couple things. Like, we're generally like Canadians, we're pretty like polite and stuff, so we're not gonna like waste people's time, or like sorry to take up your time or whatever. So one thing, like, you can't just talk to somebody for hours about your business. They don't want to listen, and also you're gonna feel bad. So getting that sort of like second set of ears type thing is like not possible from like just the regular people in your life. Also, they don't get what it's like to be self-employed. They don't get, it takes a certain type of personality to have this sort of risk tolerance that it takes to be self-employed. So talking to people who really get it, and that's part of like not being so having to do it all yourself, right? Just like having some sort of people to like talk to, bounce ideas off, get feedback. Because like, guess what, even though like for myself, like I've had some really terrible ideas, like really, really terrible ideas. Like I like alliteration and like dad jokes, and I'll call my business mentor and I'm like, hey, what about this? And I have like a good domain name, and she's like, well, you could, but I wouldn't. And I'm like, thanks, Brenda. I needed to hear that, you know? She's been like really, really helpful with that, because there's another part too, and this kind of goes with the like, sorry you guys, I'm not super articulate right now. I just want to apologize that I feel like I'm stumbling over my words. But anyways, the other point that I'm trying to make that is sort of associated with this whole concept of like squirrel and like shiny object syndrome is like not focusing on the meaningful steps that will actually like push our goals forward. And because you know why? It's boring. It's boring there. I just said it. It's super, super boring. So what happens is that we just like don't want to like follow through, or don't want to have to create a plan and like be proactive about our time or setting goals, because it takes discipline. It's not as easy as just flitting from one thing to the next. So that's another classic example. And my Papa Ride buddy was talking about this too with like his old boss, right? Just like constantly stressed and like rushing around and like fixing mistakes and putting out fires and stuff. And like, I gotta say, like, no matter what you are doing in your business, if like that is your situation, that is 100% your responsibility and 100% your fault. Because if you're creating systems and structures, and look, I did this too, right? When I first started, I was reselling hosting, and like for some reason the credit card that we were using when I was like with business partners and stuff, the credit card that I was using, like I didn't have full control over it. And what happened was the balances kept not going through for the hosting, and so like people's freaking emails would go down and stuff, right? And like I'm talking like back in 2004. So like I really don't do this anymore because I figured out what it was. But like, so now I'm putting out fires and issues about like emails going down and all kinds of crazy stuff like that because I didn't have a system in place to like make sure that things could function properly, which is part of the operations plan. And I mean, I know this is boring. I get it. It's really boring. I understand. But by creating like an effective operations plan, and like it's kind of a dumb word. It's an intimidating word. It's a big word. It just means like how you do stuff, right? If you don't have a plan for how you do stuff, then you know circumstances will make a plan for you, and like things will just happen, and it'll be chaos, and you'll be like running from one thing to the next, and like putting out fires and all that kind of stuff. And I totally used to live that way, and I completely understand. But like not having some sort of like protocols in place to prevent fires from going out is another mistake that people make. And you know, I've made it too, and the only reason I don't make those mistakes anymore is because I was like sick of how much it sucked to have to keep putting out fires all the time. Because like, man, nobody wants that, where your customers are calling and they're like mad at you and you like can't do the thing that you said you were going to do today because you have like an emergency at work and stuff. Like, it's not good for your cortisol. It's not good for your peace of mind and your like quality of life. It's no good. So to have a business that runs smoothly, it requires a little bit of planning, and it requires like a little bit of like delegation and some systems and things like that. And like that takes time to create as part of the infrastructure that you create to support you, right? So this is kind of the theme of like what I like to talk about is like, how does your business support you? Because like I see, and I know for myself as well, my business did not support me. It was like a detractor. It really hurt me a lot, and I didn't really know that it could be different until I decided to make it different. And like, anyway, it was expensive, and it was like, it took a really long time. Like I probably spent the first 8 years self-employed, just like in quite a bit of anguish. I'm not gonna lie, you guys. Like, it was, I made like horrible mistakes. I'll tell you the first one. Very first day being an entrepreneur,